Hello. Regis Kilbin is the name, and Hearthstone's the game. And today I'm going to be taking a closer look at my League of Explorers Budget Control Warrior deck. This is a deck that I've designed using mostly League of Explorers cards, along with a sampling of free cards and a handful of crafted cards from various sets throughout the game. Now, I built this deck with really one goal in mind. That is, if you're a new or growing Hearthstone player who decided to buy the League of Explorers Adventure because it looked fun and it was the newest set, so you're trying to make a deck out of the various new League of Explorers cards, and there are certainly a lot of good ones, but you want to make it competitive, so you're willing to spend a little bit of arcane dust to craft some additional cards from various sets to end up with a pretty competitive and compelling deck. And this deck in particular, I have set a limit of 500 or less arcane dust. So between League of Explorers and 500 dust, you can assemble this deck, which certainly won't take you all the way to Legend, but could easily be played up to rank 12 or rank 10 if you're really patient and skilled, and learn the deck and maybe here and there make a few key replacements as your collection continues to grow. So for beginners, this should be a pretty nice starter deck. It's difficult to build a Control Warrior style deck for cheap because typically it's loaded down with late game legendaries. But if you're smart and creative, you can still do some pretty nifty things using the cards that League of Explorers has provided, because there are a couple really heavy hitting cards like Elite Starseeker and Archetype Rafam, which allow you to do some crazy stuff on a budget. So the goal with the League of Explorers Budget Control Warrior deck really is to control the game and win in the late game thanks to a lot of heavy-hitting minions. So in the early game, you're really just trying to control your opponent's board, build up some card advantage through various card draw options, and then in the mid to late game, start exploiting your weapons and minions that can spin out of control in value, like Urbashi Berserker and Obsidian Destroyer, and even Archetype Rafam, and leverage that craziness from all those minions into a nice solid board that allows you to push for lethal. You can also look for lots of damage on the back of your weapons like Arcanite Reaper and your big minions like North Sea Kraken, or spells from Archetype Rafam. So now that you kind of know the general goal and play style for this deck, let's just go ahead. I think it's helpful to run through each and every card in the deck and describe its utility and purpose in this list, starting with number 1, and that is Execute. This is really the great equalizer for budget decks for warriors. It allows you to kill pretty much anything that your opponent can play. It's a really cheap spell, so you can remove a big threat while still having enough mana left over to develop a threat of your own, making it very powerful in late game control decks like this one, because it's a big tempo swing in your favor and helps you get up on the board. Whirlwind is a nice free card to include in the deck that is powerful against metagames where there are a lot of 1 health minions, and that is one we've seen for a very long time, where there's just a lot of imps and Silverhand recruits and little 1 health guys running around, and Whirlwind allows you to clean up a board full of those. It's also good in this deck thanks to Urbashi Berserker, because it allows you to buff his damage if you need to, because you never know when that extra 3 damage might just make the difference between killing your opponent and not. Up next is Fiery War Axe. This is really just the staple weapon for every warrior deck ever. It allows you to make a nice strong tempo play in the early game. For 2 mana, you can essentially kill 2 of your opponent's early game minions, which helps you keep the board in control and set up for future turns. Up next is Slam. This spell does 2 damage to a minion, and if that minion survives, you can draw a card. So with Slam, really your goal is a couple different things. You can just use it as a deal 2 damage spell to kill a scary minion like a Knife Juggler if you don't have a weapon. You can also use it in combo with your Fiery War Axe to draw a card and then finish off a Sledge Belcher with the remaining 3 damage from your Fiery War Axe. Sometimes you can just use it to dig for a card if you're looking for lethal or need to find an answer to combo with like an Execute, for instance. So it allows you to do some different things. It's really just a nice powerful card cycle, and dealing 2 damage to a minion is always a nice thing to have. Up next is a similar card, but it's a minion instead of a spell, and that's Cruel Taskmaster. This one allows you to deal 1 damage to a minion, and it gives it +2 attack. So Cruel Taskmaster can be used defensively to kill off 1 health minions, much like Whirlwind, which is very nice. You can also just use it to buff one of your own minions to trade more effectively or push for lethal with a late game like North Sea Kraken. You can make it hit for 11, for instance, which is very, very nasty. And the 2/2 body, of course, is also nice to stop various 2 health minions in the early game. So you could ping off a Silverhand Recruit and trade into a Knife Juggler, for instance. Up next, Shield Block. This is a 3-mana spell. It's defensive in nature. It gives you 5 armor, but also allows you to draw a card. This is really just one of the things that helps you stay alive into the late game and build up that card advantage you'll need to start pulling ahead later on. Up next is Bran Bronzebeard. This is our first League of Explorers card in the list so far. Bran has a really cool effect that your battle cries trigger twice. So we have a handful of battle cry minions in this deck. Not that many, but really just a couple that could potentially benefit from Bran. So note that Bran is not in this deck simply for his battle cry. Part of the reason he's here is because he's just a nice solid minion at 3 mana. And we do need a couple early game minions, and the potential value he can occasionally offer thanks to his battle cry is just enough for him to make the list. So when we're working with limited resources in a budget deck, getting a card like this that can potentially be really big and is merely good other times is a really great resource to have when you're on a budget. So occasionally you'll hit Defender of Argus with a Bran Bronzebeard on deck, which means it's going to buff everything for +2/+2 instead of +1/+1. That's really nice. Even though Spellbreaker is a battle cry, it won't actually help you any with Bran Bronzebeard. But North Sea Kraken also combos really nicely with Bran Bronzebeard. It can do 8 damage to whatever you target with its battle cry if Bran is on the board. So that could be 8 damage to the face, or that could kill a Ragnaros all by itself, right? And then finally, probably the best imaginable combo in this deck is Bran Bronzebeard plus Archthief Rafaam. It's a really tough one to pull off, just because Bran Bronzebeard, if you play him on turn 8, he's probably going to be dead before turn 9 rolls around. So it's hard to combo that in a single turn. It's even harder to get it off over 2 turns. But if you do, the kinds of artifacts that Archthief Rafaam provides you with are insanely powerful, and you'll get 2 of them. In fact, you'll get to choose 2 different ones if you want. So that combo is absolutely broken and game-winning if you ever do happen to pull it off. So Bran Bronzebeard is not just a good 3-drop. He's also got some pretty crazy potential, even though this deck isn't really designed or built around him. Up next is another new League of Explorer card. It's Fierce Monkey, the 3-mana 3/4 taunt. This card's really just all about value and slowing down early aggressive decks. You can't let aggressive decks get out of hand as a control warrior or you'll be doomed. So you do need to slow them down a little, and Fierce Monkey has good enough stats that it makes pretty favorable trades most of the time around turn 3 or 4 when you'll be playing it. Defender of Argus is a pretty interesting card for me to include in a budget deck. I usually don't like to include rare quality cards. I usually try to stick to really high value commons. It's because rares are considerably more expensive to craft. But with a control warrior deck, you need big bodies and threatening minions, like Eerie Statue, which we'll talk about more in a second. So Eerie Statue, to really gain a lot of value from Eerie Statue, you need an activator that makes sure that body's useful even if it doesn't get to attack all the time. And that's exactly what Defender of Argus can do. It can place a taunt on Eerie Statue, meaning your opponents have a much harder time ignoring it. If they do silence the taunt off to ignore it, then suddenly its negative status effect is gone. So that's a nice combo. But we also have a few minions in this deck which aren't, by their very nature, that strong. For instance, 2/4 is good, but it's not a great stat line for a 3-mana card. There could be better, like Fierce Monkey. Gurbashi Berserker is a 2/7, isn't that strong as a base stat line. Reno's 4/6 isn't that strong. So there are some minions that benefit from being played with Defender of Argus. Even if you just play Gurbashi Berserker as a 2/7 with Defender of Argus, you've got yourself a nice solid little 3/8 body that's going to be annoying for opponents to deal with as a taunt. So Defender of Argus is good as a defensive tool to slow down aggressive decks. It's good with Bran Bronzebeard for the increased buff. It's an activator for Eerie Statue, and it sets up your otherwise somewhat mediocre bodied minions with taunts and stats to make them a little bit more valuable. So that's one reason Defender of Argus fits into this deck. Also, it's just such a valuable card on average that I don't feel guilty requesting it for a beginner to craft, because I know you'll get value out of Defender of Argus, not only in this deck, but in many future decks. So you shouldn't feel bad at all about wasting a little bit extra dust to craft this card. It will be something you use relatively often. So Eerie Statue, as I mentioned before, this is a 4-mana 7/7. It's a huge body for its stats. It does have a downside that it can't attack unless it's the only minion on the battlefield. The great thing about Warriors is you usually don't have too hard of a time removing enemy minions with things like Execute or Whirlwind or your weapons like Arcanite Reaper. So if you put this thing on the board on turn 4, it might not get to attack right away, but eventually they'll either have to deal with it or they'll be leaving a really scary threat on board. Even if it's killed by Big Game Hunter, you're still just trading 4 mana for one of their really valuable resources that can protect your Archsthief or Farm or Northsea Kraken or Obsidian Destroyer later in the deck. So you'd rather send out Eerie Statue to be sacrificed to the Big Game Hunter gods than your more valuable minions. It's great for Defender of Argus. It does a lot of different things well. Plus, we've actually included 2 Spellbreakers in this deck. It's really nice for Control Warriors to have a silence. Usually it's going to be Ironbeak Owl. But since this is a budget deck and we need some stronger bodies and more threatening presences out of our silences, I opted to include a Spellbreaker instead of an Ironbeak Owl. But that also means that we can silence off our own Eerie Statues if we absolutely have to allow them to attack. And there will be some strategic situations where that makes a lot of sense. So Spellbreakers is a nice body. It has the silence. It activates Eerie Statue. Defender of Argus activates Eerie Statue. There's a couple different ways you can make this card work. So it's really cheap. It's included with the League of Explorers Adventure, and it has a huge threatening presence. Up next is Elise Starseeker. This is really just a monster value card in long games. She has a battle cry that shuffles a map to the Golden Monkey. That map to the Golden Monkey places a Golden Monkey in your deck. You draw the Golden Monkey. It's a 6/6 body that you get to play, and there's also an effect that turns all your remaining cards into legendaries eventually. So she does a couple of different crazy things. If you manage to get her combo off, it's not going to happen all that often, but when it does, it doesn't matter what's in your deck, you're going to be generating tons of value. Plus, just as a 4-mana 3/5, her body's not too bad. It combos nicely with Defender of Argus. And adding cards to your deck in general is a great thing for decks that are designed to go into the late game. We already touched on Spellbreaker quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and pass on to Arcanite Reaper. Ideally, most Control Warrior decks will run Death's Bite, the 4-mana card from Naxxramas, instead of Arcanite Reaper. But I don't want you to have to buy another Wing of an Adventure, so for me, Arcanite Reaper is a suitable replacement. It kills a lot of things even better than Death's Bite does. For instance, a Lothab or an Emperor Thaurissan or a Sledge Belcher. So the stat alignment makes a little bit more sense. Plus, we don't have a lot of cards in this deck that benefit from Whirlwind effects. We don't have Acolyte of Pain. We don't have Armorsmith. So we don't need the Whirlwind effect from Death's Bite nearly as much. We have one Whirlwind for defensive purposes, but beyond that, Arcanite Reaper still suits the needs of this deck pretty well. Up next is Gurubashi Berserker. I don't think Gurubashi Berserker is a great card by any means, but it's a good one, and it's underrated by most people, plus it's free. And we need some big late-game threats in this deck to really make it a Control Warrior, and this is the best free one there is, because it's very hard to deal with, and it has the potential to spiral out of control if people don't deal with it. When you combo it with Cruel Taskmaster or Whirlwind, you can really make this a pretty scary minion. Even with just one Cruel Taskmaster, you're going to make it a 7/6 minion, which is really nice if you've managed to stick it on board for a turn and get to attack with it. And given just how many 7+ attack things are in this deck, it's not going to be that susceptible to Big Game Hunter either. And as we mentioned previously, it's really nice with Defender of Argus, because if you can force them to attack into it a couple times, it's going to be really scary. Plus, it's just got a really nice health total at 7 health. That means it's a very annoying taunt for people to deal with, thanks to Defender of Argus anyway. After that is Reno Jackson. Reno is a 6-mana 4/6. if your deck contains no more than one of any card, fully heal your hero. So the way Reno works is, whatever cards are remaining in your deck, you can't have a duplicate. So you can't have 2 Arcanite Reapers, for instance. You have to have already drawn 1 Arcanite Reaper for that effect to trigger. It has to be that case with every card. Now you'll notice we do have quite a few 2-ofs in this deck. All these cards we included 2 copies of. So that means 2 things, really. It means Reno isn't perfect for this deck by any means. It's not designed to take advantage of Reno. But, that said, there will still be times in the very late game when you've got 1 or 2 cards remaining in your deck, you're in fatigue, you're at 3 health, and you're desperately clinging to your life, that you can play Reno Jackson. He'll heal you to full, and you've suddenly got a second lease on life and a chance to win the game. Those opportunities will arise. There will be other times that you're just going to play Reno as a 4-6 body on turn 6 because you do need a minion, and it's sometimes hard to get high value, solid stat minions in a budget deck like Reno Jackson. So the potential for the upside is there. Even if you don't get it, just comboing it with a Defender of Argus or something as a 5/7 makes it worth it as a card itself. So because it's good enough on its own and really good for those rare opportunities when its effect actually goes off, that's why Reno has earned his spot in this list. After that, we've got Obsidian Destroyer, another new League of Explorers card. This is a 7-mana 7/7, so that's pretty cool on its own, because you do need big bodies, and those are hard to find in budget lists, but also has a really great effect. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 Scarab with Taunt. So really, as soon as you play this, you're going to get 8/8 worth of value out of a 7-mana card. The Taunt is also nice because it can really disrupt your opponent's plans, and if this stays on board for a turn or 2 or 3 or 4, you're really going to pack a lot of value into 1 card. So this is a really nice one to have. It's a little susceptible to Big Game Hunter, but given all the other threats in this deck that are as well, that's not the worst thing in the world if they BGH your Obsidian Destroyer instead of your Archthief Rafam, for instance. And on that note, up next is Archthief Rafam. Battlecry, discover a powerful artifact for 9 mana. He's a 7/8 body, which is really strong. The artifacts, if you're not familiar, there are 3 of them. One of them will fill your board with 3/3 minions. So you'll get 7 3/3 minions for 10 mana, which is crazy awesome. Another one, will give a minion +10/+10 in stats, which means if you had like Reno Jackson on board, it would become a 14/16, and you could attack with it for 14/16, which of course occasionally will absolutely win you games. And the third one is that you'll do 10 damage randomly to random enemies. So if there's nothing on the board, it just hit the enemy's face for 10. Or if they had 7 1/1s, you might kill all 7 1/1s and hit their face for 3, for instance. So those are all incredibly strong. If you combo with Brand, you get 2 of them, which can be game-winning. As a body and a spell effect, he gives you a pretty amazing turn 9, turn 10, depending on which card you pick to meet your needs. So Archthief Rafam looks really amazing, and since you already have access to League of Explorers, he's a great finisher option for this deck. After that, one final card is Northsea Kraken. This is from the Grand Tournament. It's really just one last nice big body to slide into the end of the deck that's also very strong, has a 9/7 body that's incredibly scary, but a really strong battlecry as well that does 4 damage to either the enemy face or a minion that you need to pick off, and that can be very strong. And this deck just needed one more threat at the end of the curve, and that's exactly what Northsea Kraken can be. So there you have it. That's the League of Explorers budget control warrior deck. Now that you've seen it and heard the cards, I'd like to go ahead and just take it into a few games so we can discuss the mulligan in a little more detail and just see some lines of play and how to think strategically about this deck. So we'll go ahead and take this into ranked play. We're nearing the middle of the season, so rank 13 is still a little more competitive than average. You'll see a few legend players making their way around, and also some people who probably top out around rank 5 to rank 10, still climbing midway through the season. So it's a little more competitive than rank 13 at the end of the season, but a pretty good picture of what you might expect to see. So, okay, here we're placing a Warlock, and we don't really know what kind of Warlock it is at all. We have no indication yet. It could be aggressive, it could be late game. Regardless, we probably don't need an Execute right away. That's really more of a mid to late game card. And we don't want our Gurubashi Berserker just yet. That's for much later on. But our Fiery War Axe is really the perfect answer and something you always want to keep in the mulligan. I can't imagine any matchup or scenario where this card gets tossed back. Okay, so we have a smooth curve. These aren't necessarily things we'd want to play in this order all the time, but it's nice to see nonetheless. Looks like we have new greetings and everything for Wintervale, which is fun.
My thanks.
Okay, so we can play the Fiery War Axe here, and we could kill that. This looks like it's a potentially aggressive Warlock, but also maybe a Demon Lock that has some late game threats. I really don't know that I want to play this just yet, because we'll have the Fierce Monkey next turn that will force an awkward trade here. If I kill this now, he gets an extra damage next turn, right? Because he'll have 2 minions to attack me instead of just 1. And I don't feel an urgency to kill this right now. So I think I can just armor up at the moment. If I absolutely need to kill something next turn, I can still play this. But we have some defensive options, and I'm not feeling particularly antsy to get this out just yet. Now, see, that is something we'll need to deal with. So we cannot play the Fierce Monkey into this. So that was one of the downsides of this line of play, but we're still not too bad off. If we played the Fierce Monkey, he could have ran in the Haunted Creeper, he would have spawned 2 minions, which the Knife Juggler would have used to ping even more. He had so many more ways to clear. And this is actually totally fine. We don't mind killing this at all. It lines up nicely. This is still only doing 1 damage per turn, so we don't care. Plus, we can actually silence it off so that it doesn't spawn anything extra. We might regret that later if we need the silence for something else, but actually, I think we will regret that later. And that's why we're just going to play the Fierce Monkey. This can be used on a lot of different things. I don't know what his deck has yet, but since that's not scary, I don't feel the need to play this just because it's on curve. I'd rather float the Mana Crystal, force him to make an awkward trade. He might have an implosion here. And so I'd rather use this on the Void Caller than the Haunted Creeper, because I don't know what's behind this. I have no idea what lies behind that card and might be scaring us.
Your magic shall not save.
But that doesn't mean I have to silence it this turn, right? I could actually play something a little more on curve.
Your magic shall not save.
Alright, I'm going to do it this way. And we're just going to go face here again. We don't want to kill that for him. So he has a trade here, right? But that'll leave this as a 3-1, which we can ping off with our Cruel Taskmaster quite easily. This is an unusual line of play, potentially, for some people. I'm not exactly cleaning off the board. Alright, that's a huge deal for us. Wow. But he's still going to be able to kill him. Now our Whirlwind would be about the best card imaginable. We can actually dig for it, because I think my normal play is just going to be to ping this off. And that'll leave us 4 mana. So I'm going to look for our Whirlwind, just in case, because it would just be so amazing. Okay, so we don't get the Whirlwind, but we can still do this. There's a lot of stuff on board, but we're not too scared just yet. This actually is a pretty solid play next turn. We might have other options as well. That's a pretty low tempo play for him. He's surely going to kill this, right? No, he's not. He's still on face. Does he have a Dark Bomb? Yeah, he must have Dark Bomb, yeah. Okay, so I think we're actually not going to play this just yet. Although he used a Dark Bomb and an Implosion, so he probably doesn't have a way to kill the 7/7. He only has 7 damage on board, which we're not that scared by, right? Because we have a Taunt. We can always armor up. I'm just going to go ahead and play this. He's got an easy trade into the 1/1, but after that, he might have trouble dealing with this. If he has a BGH, we've made a pretty bad tempo play, but that seems unlikely. Okay. He did that backwards. He wasted a spawn. He should have ran a minion in first to give him more room to spawn those other minions. Yeah, he goofed that a little there, ordering wise. He should have tapped first, then ran some minions in. We got a little lucky there, boys. Plus, he felt compelled to trade, which just gives us even more time to catch up on the board. So we're going to ping one of these off. This is actually something that's really important that you need to pay attention to if you're still learning the game. These are all 1/1s, right? So it doesn't matter which one we kill, but it actually does, because this one's a demon. And Warlocks have a lot of ways to manipulate demons or buff demons, so we don't want to leave this one up. If we have a choice here, we're definitely going to get rid of the demon one. And we're just going to play our monkey, because it doesn't trade well. He's used 2 Implosions and a Dark Bomb. It's very unlikely he can actually kill this turn without maybe a Power Overwhelming. And then we'll armor up with our spare mana. We have a pretty high value play next turn with North Sea Kraken. He's tapping a lot so far, which is nice for us. That doesn't help him that much. So he's really struggling to kill our stuff, and that's perfect for this. We can just go ahead and make this play. It's going to spawn another 1/1, which is a little unfortunate, but we still have nice favorable trades here. Again, we're going to kill this demon instead of leaving it. And I guess he felt like he was a little overwhelmed there. And we were definitely in position to win that game. I think he saw it as well, of course. But we had the big bodies. We had defensive mechanisms still in hand. So that one went pretty well. We'll see what we get this time. Another Warlock. It's not the same guy, is it? No. Okay, so here we have the same thinking as last time. Execute is a 1-mana card, but it's not good early. Gurbashi Berserker's too late. Spellbreaker's actually also a little slow. We really want to get a Fiery War Axe or Cruel Taskmaster, maybe a Whirlwind. So we're looking for something a little more greedy than this. But we will keep the Fierce Monkey, particularly because we have the coin. So if we get in a real bind, we can coin this out as needed. Probably still just armor up and have a turn 3 play if we don't get anything else. Okay, so this is pretty decent actually. This is turn 2, turn 3, or maybe even coin turn 3 here, and this is our turn 4. You know, there's options to work with. And Fiery War Axe, of course, is also perfect.
Happy Feast of Winter Vale.
Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and kill that with the Fiery War Axe. You need to think about that. It might have been a good card. We've got a lot of options. This is a great opening hand. This is really about as good of an opening hand as we could have hoped for. If we had a Spellbreaker right now, I'd probably coin out the Spellbreaker just to silence that. And I might even kill it with my weapon as well. So, given that Nerubian Egg, right, it's very unlikely that Eerie Statue is ever, or at least anytime soon, going to be able to attack. Because we're not going to help him get that off the board. So I don't feel a need to coin out Eerie Statue right now. I think I'm just going to stay on curve and play the Fierce Monkey. And of course, we're not going to kill that for him. So we'll just end the turn here with our weapon active. He may have another Implosion. Well, not another, but we may see another Implosion. Fierce Monkey's just so great in these scenarios. That might be a power overwhelming he drew from the Dark Peddler. Or no, that was at the end of his hand, so that's something new. This is the Dark Peddler card here. Oh, very intriguing. He played the Knife Juggler here for 1 damage, which I find interesting. For 2 damage, I guess. That's what he got from the Peddler. Thankfully, we can still kill that Knife Juggler despite the Blood Imp buff. After that, we actually need to think about our play a little bit. Make sure we're not missing anything here. That feels obvious. So here, we could play the Eerie Statue. He doesn't have to deal with it right away. We would take 4 damage to the face, but then we could have a Defender of Argus, like Cruel Taskmaster turn next turn, to buff up the Eerie Statue as an 8/8. He's already used a power overwhelming, so he might have trouble clearing an 8/8. Or at the very least, he'll have to sack a few minions into it, which is the goal, right? We could also coin out our Gurabashi, but I think that this is actually a sound play. That the Fierce Monkey feels terrible because he just trades into it, and we could ping it off with the Cruel Taskmaster next turn, but it's floating a mana. It's just very awkward. And he's not going to know what to do with this right away. By the way, this is even worse with the Blood Imp, but we're just going to use it as a taunt body with Defender of Argus, so we're not too worried about that. So that gives him 7 damage on board. Should really be life tapping first here to see what he's got. Okay, that's actually not too meaningful. We might just go ahead and make this play and clear that off. We go down to 15, then with another 3, we'd go down to 12, and we don't have a lot of defensive plays. I think we still make this play. We'll still be able to taunt next turn, and it will be even smoother because we can use the Fierce Monkey instead of the Cruel Taskmaster. If I tried to taunt with the Cruel Taskmaster this turn, I didn't really have anything to ping. I would have had to ping something, and I would have either made his minions stronger or made mine weaker. So there was really not much advantage to trying to get the Defender of Argus out this turn. He floated quite a bit of mana that turn, so that means his hand is probably full of bigger stuff. Like, he might have a Mal'Ganis and a Jaraxxus and a... Who knows? He didn't have a 2-mana card. He's still life tapping. I'm very curious what's in his hand. A Voidwalker. Okay, that's sort of annoying, but not too bad. Okay, that's also sort of annoying, but not too bad. Oh, we could almost double Eerie Statue, but we can't, so we can't afford to. This is our play, just out of necessity. We're getting very low in health. So we need to force him to kill off his stuff and build up a nice little wall. Next turn we can taunt behind the Obsidian Destroyer, but it's certainly not much. So if he has a couple big minions in a row here, like a Dr. Boom, he could be in some serious trouble. Really just depends on how he handles this board. He's got a clean trade on the Fierce Monkey, but then he's still got an 8/8 he has to poke through somehow. But he's going to Implosion that. It rolled really low, that's good. Is that a Dark Bomb? Second Implosion? No, you can't second Implosion. That's great for us, actually, because he left us an 8/3 still, which is really nice. We can actually almost clear his board. And I have a choice here. I can shield block, armor up, but it's not like he's going to kill me through a taunt with 9 health. That doesn't seem possible. So I think I'd rather play the minion instead, just to have something on the board. Because you never know when we might need that attack or might need to start going face. One thing I should note with this deck is that 2 Eerie statues on the board together doesn't work very well, because their effects basically hurt each other. Unless you're just using them as taunt bodies, of course, like a Molten Giant or a Mountain Giant or something. Or I guess Ancient Watcher would be a better description, a really big Ancient Watcher. Okay, so that was not a plan, but actually gives us a solid minion. Was not expecting the Hellfire. Maybe should have, since he took it down to 3 and was okay with that.
Put this apple on your head.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna use the minion to kill the Knife Juggler instead of the Arcanite Reaper, because I don't want to take any more damage. And he may not have a way to ping off a 1 health minion. He's already used a Hellfire, he's used an Implosion, he's used a Dark Bomb. It's possible that that's one of his 4. He'll have 5 cards potentially next turn. Even if he does, we've still gotten some value out of this, right? We've absorbed whatever spell he uses to kill it, and we've killed the Knife Juggler. So here, I think I was tempted to play the Obsidian Destroyer, but I'm a little bit scared about how much life I have, and we have an on-curve play, and we actually put him at risk of dying next turn if he doesn't have an answer to this. So, because we have 13 damage here, so that changes his thinking. He now has to go into defensive mode. He's like, oh crap, I could be dead. So now he has to deal with this, which changes the mindset he's going through and the way he's thinking about his turn. Okay, so he has to kill this. That is so good for us that we just killed a Sludge Belcher for free. Or not Sludge Belcher, excuse me, a Doom Guard. I don't know why I was thinking Sludge Belcher. But we killed a Doom Guard totally for free. So, we're just going to play this for the fun of it. I take that back. Obsidian Destroyer is an objectively better play because it threatens lethal regardless. Because we'll have 12 damage. And it denies any chance of him having some way to win or even pop the egg out, because the egg will be running into a 1-attack minion here with Taunt. So, as fun as Archthief Rafaam might be, this is actually the better play here, despite it not being a huge legendary. It just completely shuts down any chance he has.
Buying or selling.
I don't know what he could get there that wins him the game, but he's still digging, so there's that. He needs like a taunt, like a Defender Vargas. Whoa! That's cool. I always respect seeing that in the deck. It didn't help him. We still actually had 9 damage, but it could have potentially saved him if I had gotten a 1-attack weapon. He might have bought himself another turn, depending on what we drew. That's awesome. Good on him. So that's we're 2-0 so far. That's pretty fun. Similar style decks we've beaten. I'd like to see a different kind of deck and see if we can find some real challenging opponents. So we'll play 1 or 2 more just to get a real good feel for this deck. Okay, Rogue. That is very interesting. I don't know what to expect at all with Rogue. I hear there's a new Miracle Rogue making the round, so if that's the case, this is going to be very fun. So, Fire War Axe, definite keep. Slam, I think, is a keep as well, just because we have other stuff to play. I wouldn't always keep Slam in my mulligan, especially against a Rogue, because I don't know what I'm going to use it against a Rogue. But this is a pretty solid hand with these two, so I'm willing to keep this just for the flexibility and the, like, maybe turn 4 I might have to use this for some card draw. So these two are perfect though. This is a great combo to get in your mulligan. So we could play our weapon here, right? And we might. I have to think about this. Sometimes it's better to just armor up, particularly against a rogue who's usually really oriented around doing burst damage, so every chance you can get to armor up is valuable. We might also want the tempo gain from having the weapon up a turn early. It's very unlikely that he'll have some way to disable our weapon on turn 2. He could have an acidic swamp ooze, but it seems almost impossible. I think I'm still going to value the armor up here over the weapon. We can still play the weapon next turn. He doesn't have a minion out, so it's not like we need the initiative to get Fierce Monkey out next turn if we have to play the weapon. Like, there's still a solid line of play here. So we made the right decision. He had the weapon up. We can still play our Fierce Monkey this turn. It's a good play. We get the initiative on the board. It denies his weapon from doing any shenanigans. If he doesn't have a turn 3 play, he's in trouble. He could backstab SI Agent, which is what he's going to do. And that's fine because we have the weapon to deny it. And we'll still get the armor up. Always armor second, folks. In this particular deck, it doesn't actually matter because we're not running a shield slam. But in general, you would rather have low health and high armor. It actually does matter in this deck because we have a Reno Jackson. So, say we stick at 29 health the whole game, Reno will heal for 1 instead of 0. So it can actually make a difference. So earlier in the video, I actually mentioned this exact scenario where you can slam a Sludge Belcher and then kill it with your Fiery War Axe. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and shield slam here. We don't have a way to kill that thing. It's not really bothering us. But we might need to play for next turn, and that's why we're shield slamming for that card advantage. Prep Sprint, that's actually not too bad for us. I hate when rogues get more cards, but it's really low board presence for him. He's not really accomplishing much this turn, and we had a little bit of a slow turn, so it essentially buys us a little bit of time. Okay, so we're going to do this. Get rid of this thing, and this is one of the few times he has to worry about our Eerie statue because it can attack right now. Well, not immediately, but next turn, if he doesn't have a minion out, it can theoretically attack. So he has to play something we can't kill with a Fiery War Axe, which he has. Sure would be nice to get a Cruel Taskmaster to kill that and be able to attack here. Oh, he's going to kill this. He's going to... No, he's not. He wasted a... Oh, well, there's the Cruel Task we were looking for. Huh. Life works out sometimes, huh, folks? So now that we've killed this... Oh! I goofed! It doesn't work because the Cruel Taskmaster is there. That's okay. We needed to clear that anyway. Man, these cards are sneaky. So obviously, there was no way to actually accomplish that this turn because we couldn't kill the Azure Drake without also playing the Cruel Task. So this got turned back off before it could ever actually attack. But we had to kill that anyway. You never leave an Azure Drake up against a rogue. We deposit another strong body here. We put these two next to each other because I might want a Defender of Argus next turn. And I probably don't want a Defender this because it runs into his Deadly Poison way too easily. Okay, so he's dealing with our board. He's using a lot of resources to do it, though. So I don't mind too much. What I do mind is that we don't really have a good turn 8 play right now. Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what we needed. We have a solid turn 9 option here. He's used a lot of resources so far to kill that Eerie statue, even though it wasn't activated. And that was pretty neat. He used a backstab, he used a second Deadly Poison, and a Blade Flurry, and an Eviscerate to clear up that board. So he's burning through removal. We still have a fair chunk of health. We're actually in danger range for rogues. You know, it doesn't take too many Tinker Sharpsword oils for him to be right back in the game. So here we're just going to play our Archthief. He didn't have an answer for the Obsidian Destroyer, so he could potentially Tinker's Sharp Sword, Blade Flurry. He has a lot of cards and clear our board. That would suck, because we'd take a lot of damage to the face, but he'd still be using a lot of resources. We could recover potentially next turn with a Reno Defender to deny any antics. But he'll also have 2/1/1, so he probably can't attack face first. This is an interesting dilemma. I don't actually know which of these is going to be best right now. He used a Blade Flurry, so I think that fill your board with 3/3 zombies is strong. But we could also put this in a taunt and make it nasty. Let's just pick this one for the reliability. It's the most consistent of the three. It doesn't require something on board to work. He has 10 cards in hand. There's so much he can do. I don't know what he's got up there, but it makes me very nervous. I wish we had been able to hero power more this game just to keep our life total high, but we definitely cannot pull off a Reno Jackson yet. I don't see how he lives here if... Oh, he can. He can live. Prep. What's this going to be? Another sap? No, prep fan. Okay, that's okay. I don't actually have a way to kill the Dr. Boom, do I? If we had taken the +10/+10, man, we can do some shenanigans. I can do 4 damage here and 1 damage there. I think I'm just going to have to trade in. I can't start going face. We still have to clear his board. It's just much too threatening. So I think I have to make this trade. I'm a little scared to play the Mirror of Doom. Let's see. Double Tinkers plus Blade Flurry. Does that kill me? It might. Still gonna do this just to see it in action. I've never actually seen this happen. So we could be dead. It's very possible, unfortunately, but this is the strongest play. Leaves us a lot of stuff on board to combo with, like Defender of Argus next turn too. So yeah, we could be dead. What does it take him to? 7. He's got 14. Yeah, I think we're dead. Yeah, we're dead. That was exact. I should have done the math. But it wasn't guaranteed that he had it either. He'd already used 1 Blade Flurry. We could have probably won that one with a taunt. But we wanted to see Archthief for FOM, and that is worth something, right, folks? Double Tinker's Blade Flurry. We called it, and we still ignored it. And he had it. Alright, so we're gonna... This is probably our last game here with the Budget Control Warrior. Druids can definitely be a challenge, so this will be fun. So, here we're going to keep the Fierce Monkey. It trades pretty well in the Darnassus Aspirant turn late, but it still does it. We don't need the Gurubashi or the Arcanite. I'm debating the Eerie Statue, but I think we'd rather get some more active early game plays than a passive one like Eerie Statue. So, and we did. We got another. This can be a turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, basically with the coin. So it worked out. This guy's pretty cute. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Griffin. Thought that might be Christmas themed, but it's not. We might actually play this on turn 2 as well. Druids can have trouble dealing with minions. Wouldn't be bad to get out early. It depends on what he plays. If he plays the Darnassus, I think we have to kill it with the Fiery War Axe. He's really thinking about it or not doing much. He's gonna hero power. What's he got up there? Okay, so the Fierce Monkey here will be perfect. I don't think he has a turn 3 way to deal with it. We don't need the weapon yet. We'll rather get the minion. Weapons have charge, right? Minions don't. So if you can get the minion out first, it always makes more sense to do so. He's not giving me much to work with on this hand. He's not looking at any cards so far.
I wonder.
Okay, we don't have any way to ever kill that, unfortunately. But we have enough taunts that it's going to be denied for a little while at the very least. I guess he could swipe trade, but I don't think that's sensible for him. Okay, so I think we're going to silence that Shredder and trade into it, but that really sets him up nicely here. We could just do this and deny the Shredder and deny the Shade for another turn. But that gives him a pretty good swipe. Well, not that good. He still has to trade in 2 minions for it. I just don't know that we want to try to get into a race with a Druid if we're not better off clearing that Shredder. We can take him down to 20. But it's not just taking him to 20. It's dealing with his board. We have potentially a Spellbreaker Execute next turn. We have a Fiery War Axe or even an Arcanite Reaper next turn. I think we're going to be aggressive for once and put the pressure on him. He could swipe this, but he has to give up both minions. And he floats a mana. It's making it awkward for him at the very least. A lot of times you just want to create friction for your opponent. They have tough decisions or awkward trades. It can really start to add up over the course of a game. Innervate, 7 mana. Ancient of War. Okay, well we have a great answer for that with a Spellbreaker Execute. Actually, we don't need to waste a Spellbreaker. We're just going to execute, right? Yeah, we can do this. Here I think we're just gonna go face. He didn't have a way to deal with these last turn, or he wasn't willing to at the very least. We have 10 damage from our Arcanite Reaper. We can get through a taunt with Spellbreaker. He's at 9 health and he still has 2 minions to deal with. Like, I feel kind of good about that decision right now. It could come back to bite us, you never know. But he's finally got a good trade here. But he's just going to be close to dead. We have 13 damage and weapons still. So he's finally going to run the swipe. But he's going to hero power that? He can't afford to hero power that and go to 4. Okay, Living Roots, that's pretty good. He's coming back into the game a little here. What's he going to get off this? It's going to be a big difference. Okay. It's not too bad. So he's not going to like this, but this is a mid-range Druid because he's running Shade of Naxxramas. The odds of him having 2 Ancient of Wars has to be 0, right? It just has to be 0. I could just play this now and take him to 4, and he hero powers up to 5, but he could have an Ancient of Lore, which heals him. This is the best play. I'm still going to go face with this. It takes him to 6. I'm actually not going to go face with this. I'm going to kill this thing. And I'll tell you why. It's because taking him to 6 doesn't help Arcanite Reaper get the kill any faster, right? He's still 2 attacks. 9 is no different than 6, whereas where Arcanite Reaper's concerned. We could theoretically almost be dead to an Innervate combo scenario, so I didn't want to leave him with 2 minions on the board. He's making pretty awkward trades. Used all of his mana. To play Arcanite Reaper, armor up. I think we're almost golden. So we're at 24. If he Innervate combos, it's 14 plus 5 is 19 plus 4 is 23. We're 1 off lethal Innervate combo, so we should be okay. Yeah, he just had to give up there. Okay, so that was actually a really interesting look at an alternative for this deck, which is sometimes if you actually get the initiative, especially against somebody like a druid who has trouble clearing minions, you can actually just shift focus instead of worrying about their board. Look for damage and just rush them down. I mean, it worked out nicely that we had the Execute and the Spellbreaker, but we knew that when we made those decisions. We said, hey, we've got ways to get through taunts and threats. Why don't we just kind of turn this on its head and push for lethal instead of always worrying about defending up. Now, see, we were actually 1 damage off from dying if he had had 3 magic cards Innervate combo, so it was very careful. Last game we messed it up with the Rogue. He had exact lethal with that scenario. But the thing about that game, too, is he had boom bots, so he could have had lethal even with less. This game, it worked out even better, and we made the right decision, so that's always nice and rewarding. But there you have it. That is the League of Explorers Budget Control Warrior. It's a budget deck, but as you saw from playing it here, even at rank 12 against pretty high-level opponents and really well-refined decks and top meta decks, it did not feel like a budget deck, did it? It felt pretty strong and powerful, and we got 3 wins and 1 loss that was probably our fault. So really almost went 4-0, right? That's not too bad for a budget deck at only 500 dust and 1 adventure. So I hope you do have fun with this League of Explorers Budget Warrior. I actually had tons of fun, even though I have a full Wallet Warrior list. This one's really just about as much fun. So good luck out there on the ladder with this deck. If you have any questions, do please leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the list or replacements or upgrades that you might have or think about. Always happy to discuss it. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, this is Regis Kilbin. Game on.